This is pretty nice. I think it's more than pretty nice, don't you? Y'all are going to have to preach with me this morning, so you might as well wake up now. This is really good. That's a little better. Okay. We'll work at it. First of all, I bring you greetings from Bishop Ariel this morning, who is busy being a bishop this morning and doing bishop things, which is what a bishop does, which is why you also have extra priests in a cathedral, so that when the bishop is off being a bishop, the priest can still exercise the priestly ministry ordinarily done by a bishop. Very, very clear, right? Very logical. Makes a lot of sense. Anyway, whatever the case, I'm just excited that I get to be here. I've waited 30 years for this day, for the day when the Cathedral of the King can worship on their own land in the sanctuary that God has provided, at the altar which God has provided. It's come a piece at a time a bit. We've had altars, we've had places, but not our land. We had land, but the building wasn't finished. It's still not finished. We're not there, but we're a whole lot further than we were. And we need to be thankful to God. I was telling those in the devotion this morning, I say I've been here 30 years. I'm one of the babies, because there's a lot of you been here a lot longer than that. And when I was saying, to those that are there, I knew some of your grandparents, I knew some of your parents, still do, but there's some who I've known so long ago who aren't with us anymore, passed on, and they're so excited. I can just feel it, and I know you can too. And remember, this isn't the end. Remember, the very first Sunday we were in this building, we were at the altar over there. I was privileged to be able to share that day too. I believe it was February somewhere. And I said then, no, that wasn't it. I was participating in the choir area, and I had a word, and that was the word. This is not the end. We're just getting started. And today is part of the fulfillment of that. So anyway, yeah, I can live here. And we will, That's neat. So, let me tell you a little story here. Long years ago, back before there were convenience stores on every corner. You young guys, you may not believe this, but there was a time when there weren't convenience stores all over town on every corner. Back then, there weren't convenience stores everywhere, but there were snack machines. Maybe some of you guys remember that. Now, there's still snack machines today because they're very useful, but back then, when you couldn't just walk around the corner and get a candy bar or whatever, bag of chips, that wasn't available, but they had snack machines all over the place. And it was good. It was nice. And one of the biggest snack companies where I'm from, usually the company that made the snacks owned the machines. It was their business, right? And one of the biggest snack machine companies had logos painted on their machines. And it said, "Don't go around hungry." Good advice, right? And it worked. Anytime I looked at one of those machines, I said, wow, I could sure use a candy bar. Or some of them were soda machines. And they would say, have a, whatever the name of the soda was. I am thirsty. They worked. I mean, they really made you hungry. They really made you thirsty. And it was just, there's nothing like the joy of going over to the snack machine. The same snacks we have today. Except they had little bags of salted peanuts. They're about this big. And the plastic was clear. You could look in there and see your salted nut. And, oh man, it looks so good. And you could spend maybe 10 cents to get you a pack of salted nuts. And then there's the soda next door. You had to have them going together. You put in a nickel or a dime and get your soda. And for 25 cents, you can enjoy satisfaction. You open the peanuts, take 5 or 6 of them, put them inside the bottle, let them get all nice and wet and fizzy with the soda. You eat the peanuts, you drink the soda with nuts in there. It's heaven. Ultimate satisfaction. There was another company, not a snack company, but this was a company that made crackers. And they came out with a brilliant slogan also. They hired one of the TV personalities there. He had a famous homespun persona, and he'd come out on television, and everybody knew him. Oh, there's old so-and-so. We can trust him. And he'd say, what are you hungry for when you don't know what you're hungry for? Something on a crisp, fill in the blank, cracker. I don't think we're supposed to mention brand names. That's why I'm here. But, and it worked for me. I was watching TV, watching this program, whatever, and suddenly I got to go go to the kitchen and get one of those crackers. We had them always in the kitchen. They're still around today. Some of you probably have them in your homes. They're available here. But I got to go, and whatever you put on it, I put a piece of cheese on it, I put peanut butter on it, whatever I could find. And why? Snacking satisfaction. But they had something figured out. Everybody gets hungry. But nobody likes to be hungry. Am I right? I'm speaking you the truth, right? Everybody gets hungry, but nobody wants to be hungry. Aha, business opportunity right there. Don't go around hungry. What are you hungry for when you don't know what you're hungry for? Something on our cracker. Yeah, because that's just the way it is. People get hungry. In fact, if you're not hungry, something's wrong. If you say to your child, let's eat dinner, I'm just not hungry, Mom. Or you put your food in your pet's bowl and then turns and walks away, you get scared. Our puppy's sick. Our dear dog's sick. Are you okay? I've got to call the doctor. Because if they're not hungry, they're sick. That's just the way it is. Part of our makeup is being hungry. Food and hunger, it's actually become a science over the past how many ever years. It's not like recently, 100 years or so, but it keeps developing more and more. And man has developed scientific knowledge about food and hunger. Man has discovered something. There are two kinds of hunger. There's stomach hunger. Stomach hunger is when your body is hungry for what it needs, nutritional stuff. You might be hungry for some vegetables. You might be hungry for a nice plate of greens. Maybe, some sort of if you're not a vegetarian, a nice big steak, whatever. But if you're hungry for good stuff, that's stomach hunger. But they've discovered there's also mouth hunger. Mouth hunger is when your mouth craves for something, your body doesn't really want it, but your mouth wants it. Your tongue literally sends signals to somewhere in your brain and says, salty, salty, you want salty. Or for some of us, it's sweet, sweet, you want sweet. How many sweet tooths do we have in here? Come on now, honesty's the best policy. Yeah, But actually, there's more people these days who have salt cravings. You just got to go and get that bag of chips. You can't pass the convenience store's aisle with the bag of chips without, got to grab one. That's mouth hunger. Believe it or not, folks, those things are not really very good for you. Did you know that? I do, and I still eat it, but it's mouth hunger. And there's mouth hunger that brings these cravings, and not just taste, not just sweet or salty. You can develop cravings for crunchy or smooth. You can develop craving for hot or cold. All sorts of things that it comes from your mouth. And they call it mouth hunger. And it has nothing to do with your good health. And as I said, this has become a science. And scientists have learned that you can train your mouth hunger. Now this is great, right? You can actually train your mouth hunger so that you're not hungry for the unhealthy things, but you leave room for your stomach hunger to kick in and say, gulai, gulai, gulai. Eat a little bread if you like, if you're not gluten resistant or whatever they call it. But yeah, you can eat. But the bad thing is, they've kind of taken it around the other way. What the snack companies have done, they've learned all about snack hunger and mouth hunger and how to train mouth hunger, and they have spent millions and millions of dollars on research and development trying to decide how to train your mouth to crave their snacks. Honest, that's what's going on. They could be training your mouth to eat healthy things. They could be training the mouth of your kids to eat healthy things. But instead, they're training your children's mouths and your mouth to eat junk food. Now, isn't that shocking? That's just awful. They could be training your desires for good. Instead, they're training your desires for mouth stuff. That's pretty shocking. But you know what? It's not new. The devil's been doing that for years. Think about it. The devil tries to take your innate desires to serve and worship the Lord and twist them around. where you want to serve and worship Him. Goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. When I said this has been going on for years, 6,000 years if you count chronologically the numerical clues in the Bible, in the Garden of Eden, that's what Satan did. He convinced Eve and then Adam, God's given you this tree of life. In the tree of life, they had everything they needed for a healthy life. There was nothing lacking. Everything they needed was in the tree of life. They would be like synonymous with what we were calling stomach hunger. Stuff you need, and it was there. God gave it to them and gave them the desire for that. But the devil said, that's what God said you could eat, right? Yeah. He said you couldn't eat that other tree. You couldn't eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? No. The Lord said we couldn't eat that. He's ripping you off. You're not satisfied. You think you're satisfied with the tree of life. I'm telling you, Eve, you're not satisfied because you haven't eaten from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Once you eat that, then you'll be satisfied. But God, with that silly tree of life, He can't satisfy you. You will never be satisfied. You will always be hungry, Eve, unless you learn to go around to the other side of that tree. Eat from that other tree. Eat from my tree. That's what the temptation was all about. Same as the snack food people are doing now. Taking healthy desires and warping them and muting them and amplifying mouth hunger. Flesh desires is what we would call it scripturally, probably. That's kind of what's happening. Now, that's the background. Let's get to some scripture now. As I said, Satan was kind of like, God had told Adam and Eve what to do, what to eat. Tree of life, good. Tree of the knowledge of the good and evil, bad. This is good fruit. That's not good fruit. I mean, we've all heard this since we were little kids. You guys ever hear this saying, forbidden fruit makes bad jam? You ever heard that? That was a phrase when I was a kid. I don't know if it's famous or just happened to be where I was or whatever. But, if something's forbidden, you can think, that's kind of tempting that it's forgiven. See, that's the devil's work, that mouth hunger. But when you make the jam out of that forbidden fruit, it's not very good at all. For as the line goes on, what was sweet may be bitter when it's all boiled down. Eve knew that, but the devil led her to believe that God couldn't be trusted to satisfy her desires. The tree of life is insufficient to meet your mouth hunger. For that, you got to indulge in that other tree. She and Adam gave in. They put their fleshly desires, the mouth hunger, over their spiritual desires for God. And you know what? They suffered for it. We're still suffering for it today. We still have confusion over our desires. Flesh desires or spirit desires. Mouth hunger or stomach hunger. And we still have to ask those same questions of the devil every day in our life. Do we trust God to satisfy our desires? All our desires? Or do we let the enemy tell us that the really important desires can't be met by anything except that other tree? The other one. Not the tree of life, the other tree. That's the only way you'll get all your desires met. That's the devil's number one temptation. And it all stems pretty much from that. All of it stems from, can you trust God to satisfy you? Every desire you have. Because see, we're going to be hungry. We already agreed on this a few minutes ago, right? You will be hungry. That's the way God made us. You ever think about why God made us that way? Why didn't God make living things just something that, okay, you stoke up once and you're good for your life? Like a unlimited load from the phone service company. There is such a thing. But that's not. You know why? God tells us in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. He says, God let you be hungry. Now there's something about it. Hunger makes me uncomfortable. I don't like hunger. Well, God let that happen to you. Why? To make you understand that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by everything that proceeds out of the mouth of the Lord. The version here from Deuteronomy is slightly different from when Jesus quoted it to Satan in the mountain of temptation. But this is the version right from Deuteronomy. Let you be hungry, you understand. Man doesn't live by bread alone. We have mouth hunger. And that's okay. You've got to fulfill that. You've got to satisfy that. That hunger is there and God allowed it to happen, but that's not the only hunger you have. You also have stomach hunger. Hunger for proper nutrition. Hunger for proper spiritual food. Two types of hunger. There's spiritual and physical. And God is faithful to satisfy them both. But the spiritual is more important than the physical. You bear witness with that? You know what I mean? Say that with me. The spiritual hunger is more important than the physical hunger, than my mouth hunger. It's there, you got to feed it. But there's something that's a higher level. That is exactly what Jesus meant when he said in the Beatitudes, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for Coca-Cola. Yeah. Hunger and thirst for V-Cut. No. Hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. I'm not against Coke and V-Cut. If we weren't around, they'd probably go out of business because we eat a bunch of them. But you hunger and thirst after righteousness. What's the promise? For they shall be, what's that word? Get used to that word. We're going to talk about it a lot in the next few minutes. Satisfied. How do you be satisfied? Hunger and thirst for righteousness. Righteousness, we all know that means in right standing with God. But it also means being in harmony with His purposes for your life and His will for your life. That's righteousness. And Jesus did have that righteousness. When we're walking in that, when we're walking in harmony with God, in communion with Him, with His people, and in knowing His will and following His will, that's righteousness. And He says, you will be satisfied. Jesus Himself said in John chapter 4, verses 32 and 34, He said, my food is to do the will of Him who sent me. Because the disciples had gone away to get lunch, and then when they came back, Jesus was like, I'm good. Jesus, did you eat something already? I got food you don't know anything about. My food is to do the will of Him who sent me and to accomplish His work. That's feeding your spiritual hunger. You have a desire to know the will of God, to do the will of God, to accomplish His work. Jesus knew that. That's what He came to do. That's what He did. And He satisfied His own hunger. Christ was hungry for sure. It says several times He was hungry. Physically. And He was also, but more importantly, said the food that you don't even know about yet is that spiritual hunger. To know God, to know His Word, to know His will, to live His will, to do His work. And now here's the thing. You can satisfy your mouth desires all day long, and you still won't be satisfied. But this is where the gospel comes in. What does the gospel say there? When you are fed by Jesus, when the hungry are fed by Jesus, as were those 5,000 on the Galilean hillsides, it says in the gospel, what happened? When Jesus fed those 5,000, all ate and were satisfied. You want to be satisfied? There's the clue. Be fed by Jesus. Let that spiritual hunger be fed by Jesus, and you will be satisfied. Not just with the natural desires, not just with the stomach hunger, but even the mouth hunger gets fed when you're following the Lord. Because following Him in His will, you'll know which mouth hunger is legit and necessary, and which of it's kind of like, I think that's called temptation. I don't want to eat from that other tree. Now, there's one side note here. There's a difference between being satisfied and being a pig. You follow me? Between satisfied and being a glutton. Being a glutton means you just eat till it's all gone. They didn't do that in the gospel. Anytime in that gospel is printed, all 4 times, it just says they ate and were satisfied. All 4 gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. It didn't say they ate until it was all gone. In fact, when they finished, there was more left than when they started. Remember that? All the baskets full of left over? Gluttony is different from being satisfied. Gluttony is actually, it's kind of like crossing the line from need to indulgence. Gluttony comes from this other tree over here. That other tree, remember the tree that has the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil? That's where gluttony comes from. Satisfaction comes from the tree of life. Any fruit from the tree of life, eat, and you'll be satisfied, but there'll be an abundant supply still left. Not like they used to say when I was a kid, I'm full as a tick. You see a tick, he's about this big. Once he starts eating blood, he gets like this big, but it's all blood. It's not, but that's full as a tick. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about gluttony. We're talking about satisfaction. And that is what the Lord brings to us. Now, knowing this, about to get to the homily now. Aren't you ready for that? Knowing that there's 2 types of desires, with the spiritual being more important, that brings us to Isaiah's question in the first reading, in the 2nd verse, where in Isaiah 55, where he says, why do you spend money for what is not bread, and your wages for what does not satisfy? Isaiah is just reminding us of everything we've already said. The unspiritual hunger, the mouth desires, we're spending so much for that, spending so much time. Got to get that mouth happy. Got to get that mouth satisfied. Okay, he's satisfied. Now he's not again. Got to do it again. And our life goes through that over and over and over. That's mouth hunger. Spiritual mouth hunger. That's what Isaiah is talking about. You work so hard. You spend so much. Use so much effort to get something that will not satisfy you. And your wages for what does not satisfy. You're focusing so much effort to satisfy your mouth hunger. When God Almighty stands ready and able to meet and satisfy all of your desires. Stomach hunger, mouth hunger. See, all the devil has to offer from this tree over here is junk food. And it satisfies nothing. It just creates more cravings, which will also go unsatisfied. That's what happens when you fill up on the fruit from the knowledge of good and evil. That tree, that other tree. Isaiah continues, the rest of verse 2. This is where it's getting really important here. Listen carefully to me and eat what is good. He extends the metaphor with the food and says, all this food from the tree of life, you're eating this. If you listen to me, eat what's good. You're eating what? My words. Delight yourself in abundance. See, the devil's lie that he told Eve, that he told Adam, that he told you, that he told me, God can never satisfy your cravings because he's got so many bow wows everywhere. Bow wow this, bow wow that. You can't ever be full. See, that's a lie. You can be full from here, and there are things that he will, there are times when the mouth hunger gets satisfied when it needs to be. But the main thing is he satisfies. If you're focusing on this tree, there's satisfaction. There's fulfillment. There is abundance. The key is to listen and eat the good stuff, not the bad stuff. It's that simple. Eating the good stuff, you're satisfied. Eating the bad stuff, you'll always be going around hungry. But that's the metaphor he's using. Listen to my words, because my words are the fruit of this tree. And he says in verse 3, incline your ear and come to me. Listen that you may live. Now there's the word live. That brings us back to this tree of life. How do we get the fruit from the tree of life? Listen. Because here at the tree of life is God's words, God's way, teaches us how to walk, God's will for you, lets you know what you should be doing with your life. All that is the fruit of the tree of life. So when you eat the fruit from the tree of life, what are you going to receive? Life. Incline your ear, come to me, listen that you may live. Now, here's where we get deviated a little bit. When we don't listen to God, when we don't hear the fruit from the tree of life, spiritual famine comes. This is what Amos says. Amos says in chapter 8, He said, there's going to be coming a time where there's a famine for the hearing of the word of the Lord. Famine is a time when nobody's satisfied, right? Famine is a time when there's no food and everybody's hungry. I don't care how much money you have. If there's no food, you're going to be hungry. That's called famine. And Amos said, there's going to come a famine for the word of the Lord, the hearing, rather, of the word of the Lord. But it's easy to quench that famine. Just start listening. He said, hear my word. Listen to the word that's coming right out of that tree of life. Find my will there. Find everything that you need there. My way, the things that you need to be doing. It's there at the tree of life. When you follow that, you listen to that, you do that, you consume that, you're satisfied. But a lot of Christians are dissatisfied today because a lot of Christians have forgotten that this should be their primary source. A lot of Christians are trying to live off mouth hunger and wonder why they're dissatisfied. And they go to church. But sometimes they don't hear. Sometimes they don't listen. And you can be in church, but if you're not hearing and listening by the Spirit, the words from the tree of life, it won't be satisfying to you. You know people like this. I know people like this. They say, I'm just not satisfied anymore. No, it's like I'm wanting to hear something I'm not hearing. And I'm going, and you say, what do you want to hear? So-and-so. They said that last Sunday, for crying out loud. I feel like we're not doing enough. What do you think we should do? We should be doing this and that. There's a ministry that's been doing that for 12 years. The problem is not that there's a famine for the Word, there's a famine for hearing the Word. And that happens to a lot of people. As I said, I know people like that, you know people like that. And they begin to say, yeah, I think I'm just not satisfied here anymore. I think what I need to do is just, change my situation a little bit. Maybe I need to be somewhere else. Maybe this just isn't satisfying for me. Maybe I can't be satisfied here. Maybe I'll go somewhere else. How do we answer that with the gospel? I put it in full caps on the slide. Quote from Matthew chapter 14, verse 16. It says, they do not need to go away to be satisfied. You do not need to go away to be satisfied. The problem with dissatisfaction is not the word's not there, this is not there. No, we're just not hearing it. We're not listening because other people are hearing it. Other people are listening, but in full caps, quoted right out of the mouth of Jesus, they do not need to go away. You're here, it's good. God will satisfy you right here. And as we learned a few verses later, they all ate and were satisfied because they'd spent the whole day there on the mountain listening to the word of Christ. When you listen, when you're fed by Jesus Christ and God's grace, satisfaction is sure to come. Well, that's the reason we're here. That's the reason I'm here this morning. Long story, but it really wasn't supposed to be me presiding this morning. It goes back about 3 or 4 weeks ago or a month ago. There was some jumbling and different things because of my medical schedule. Anyway, long story short, I'm here. It wasn't supposed to be. But 3 weeks ago, the Lord gave me that word right there. They do not need to go away. And that's probably for somebody here. Probably the reason you're viewing us on streaming us. Whether you do it every week or whether you just happen to be, scrolling through and, what's these guys? What's that, That's why you're here. To hear those 6 words. They do not need to go away. 7 words. That's not where your satisfaction comes. Your satisfaction comes when you hear the words from the tree of life. Just a few more minutes and we're done here. Just some more scriptures to more reinforce. Look at today's psalm if you need a little more convincing about satisfaction and where it comes from. One of David's best psalms, 145, says in verse 15 and 16, the eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due time. Whether it's stomach hunger, mouth hunger, whatever, spiritual hunger, physical, He made you, He knows you need it, and He gives it to you in due time. You open your hand and satisfy the desire of every living thing. How many of you are a living thing this morning? Is anyone not a living thing? Come on, be honest now. I'm pretty sure you guys are living things. Deacons, are you living things? Let me see a hand. Show of hands. Who's a living thing? If you're streaming, click one of those little emojis or whatever. Or you can type it in. I'm a living thing, Father. Yeah. Good for you. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's no one here that is not a living thing. Going all the way down to this tiny little child back there, to the oldest one here. Might be me for all I know. Whoever it is, you're all living things. That means this promise is for you. You qualify. Satisfy the desires of every living thing. Great news, right? Thanks, David. That was a good one. Let's continue in verse 19. He will fulfill the desire of those who fear Him. He will also hear their cry and will save them. He'll fulfill your desire for salvation. See, that's the root core of everybody's desire anyway. This guy over here, this tree, will never admit that. But at the root of your desire is to be saved. Isn't it good to know the Lord's done that? He's done it, He's doing it, and He will do it. According to the Scriptures, according to the theologians. And that's what He tells us here. He will fulfill the desires by saving them. Remember, God knows your needs, your desires, even before you ask. And if you listen to your stomach hunger rather than your mouth hunger, you're blessed. Look at the very first psalm, the first two verses of the first psalm. How blessed is the man. What do you want to be blessed? Here's how it happens. Who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked or stand in the path of the sinners. Don't eat this fruit over here. Not good for you. Sit in the seat of scoffers. That comes from this other tree. But his delight, desire, whatever you want to call it, is in the law of the Lord. From this tree over here. You want to be blessed? This tree. Psalm 40 verse 8 also says, I delight to do your will, O my God. Your law is within my heart. What do we delight in this morning? Do we delight in our stomach desires? Are we like, oh, I'm kind of liking the mouth desires right now, you know. The devil already told me that this guy can't fulfill all of them, so, it's a lie. God can fulfill all your desires. I've taken all this time to read all these scriptures to you to show you God can fill your desires. He will fill all your desires. Whether it's for Angel's Pizza or whether it's for whatever, He'll fulfill. He made you hungry so that you'd know, hunger, I've also got this hunger. But pursuing your mouth hunger or waiting for the devil to keep his promise when he said, I'll fulfill that mouth hunger, you know what that is? That is an express train taking a one-way ride on the Rolling Stones Express. How many of you know what the Rolling Stones Express is? I can't get no satisfaction. No, thank you, Connie. I'm glad somebody knows it. We just dated ourselves. Kids, go home and Google it. It was a major thing for decades. But that's it. I can't get no... You want to be on that train? I don't want to be on that train. You know what's better? Here's a train you want to take a ride on. How can I forget His love? How can I forget His mercy? He satisfies. He satisfies. He satisfies my desires. That's what God's promising us today. We do not need to go away. We just need to open up our hearts to the Lord, open our ears and listen and realize everything we need has been right here, right where the Lord has us, wherever that may be. That's God's promise to those who listen to Him. You know, one of the strong desires which God gives us is a desire to worship Him. You want to worship Him because that's the way God made you. He didn't make you that way because, I really like to get worship. I'm going to make that guy worship me because I get off on that. Some people try to turn God into this egomaniac or something. That's not the thing. He gives you a desire to worship Him because that's what makes you fulfilled. When you understand that and you say, I worship God because that's just what I want to do. There's no satisfaction like that. How many of you know what I'm talking about? You know that when you give yourself to worship God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength, there is no satisfaction comparable to that. Right? Okay. We're going to give a little exercise for this. Father Dino's promised us, and King David and everybody's promised us along here. You know this, right? I worship you, Almighty God. There's none like you. I worship you, O Prince of Peace. That is what I want to do. That's your desire. How many of you want that desire filled this morning? If you do, let's stand up. For those of you who are streaming, stand up too. Nothing wrong with that. And have that desire in your heart fulfilled. That desire to worship God. He put it there, and He wants to fulfill it. Let's let that be fulfilled now.
I worship you, Almighty God. There is none like you. I worship you, O Prince of Peace. That is what I want to do. I give you praise, for you are my righteousness. I worship you, Almighty God. There is none like you. I worship you, Almighty God. There is none like you. I worship you, O Prince of Peace. That is what I want to do. I give you praise, for you are my righteousness. I worship you, Almighty God. There is none like you. I give you praise, for you are my righteousness. I worship you, Almighty God. There is none like you. There is none like you. There is none like you.